Tonight on World News, crisis in Egypt, our big interview. Christiane Amanpour makes her way through the dangerous streets of Cairo to question President Hosni Mubarak at the presidential palace. Tonight, the exclusive interview.
He told me that I am fed up. After 62 years in public life, I have had enough. I want to go.
So why is he waiting? Does he feel betrayed by the U.S.? Amanpour asks him. And outside the palace, the streets boiling over again. The tanks, the trucks. Our ABC team is seized and threatened with death. Their first-hand report.
From ABC News headquarters, this is ABC World News with Diane Sawyer.
Good evening tonight. Only on World News, ABC's Christiane Amanpour has made her way through the dangerous streets of Cairo into the presidential palace to question the man at the center of this worldwide storm, the embattled Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, 82 years old, who survived at least 6 assassination attempts in his life, but is now encircled by chaos. And to get there, Christiane had to move through those rioting thugs out again today in the streets, threatening death to journalists. It is, by the way, 8 miles from that Revolution Square to the presidential palace, a trip filled with peril and unpredictability. An incredible journey on this breaking story, and Christiane joins us now. Christiane, what was it to walk in that room, and what did the president say?
Well, it was an extraordinary experience. Obviously, he's embattled. He hasn't been seen, certainly by foreign journalists or in public, except for those speeches and statements that he's made in the last few days on state television. When I walked in, I asked him how he was. He said, I feel strong. He said, I am not the kind of person to run. And he said, I will die on Egyptian soil. When I asked him about whether he would step down now, he said to me, you know, Christiane, I've been in public service for 62 years, and now I'm fed up and I want to retire. But if I resign now, he said, there will be chaos, and I'm afraid the Muslim Brotherhood will take over.
So he drew the line on retiring now. Did he say whether the Obama administration has asked him to retire now? And how does he feel? Does he feel betrayed by the American pressure?
When I asked him whether he felt betrayed, he sort of did the shrug, and he didn't answer one way or another. But he did say President Obama was a very good man, he thought, but that he didn't think that President Obama understood the culture here, and that if he resigned in this kind of situation immediately, then there would be chaos, and he had to do it in an orderly way.
Right now, it seems the most threatening people on the streets are people who claim to be his supporters. Who does he think is behind the violence?
Well, I asked him precisely about that. People who are going and attacking the protesters in the square, using pictures of him, using signs saying, stay Mubarak. And he denied, so did the other ministers, that they had made any such orders, that their supporters should attack the protesters. He blamed agitators. He even at one point, so did the other ministers, suggest that the Muslim Brotherhood was behind it. But he also said to me, I am very unhappy about what I've seen in that violence over the last couple of days, and that I do not want to see Egyptians fighting Egyptians. Something
else that was extraordinary to me, and news, his son, Gamal, who had widely been reported to be his anointed successor, was there?
He was indeed. He was at the meeting, and so was his wife in the palace, he told me. The family is still here. Again, he said, we don't flee, we're still here. And he also said that he had never intended to stand for another term of election, and nor did he intend for Gamal, his son, to be his successor.
Give me a sense of the security in the palace itself as you're walking the halls. Where were the tanks, and were there armed guards everywhere?
Well, as you can imagine, there is, as around any such presidential building, heavy security. And certainly there have been pictures on television here showing some of that security in the last few days. Absolutely.
You also had an interview on camera with the newly named Vice President Omar Suleiman. Did he talk about what they're going to do next? What are they going to do about the crowds in the street?
Well, exactly that. Both the vice president, other members of the government, and indeed the army itself has asked the people to leave the square now. They've said, we've heard your demand, and now leave the square. So I asked the vice president what would happen.
If they don't leave, which they say they won't until President Mubarak leaves, What will you do? Will you give an order?
We will call them. We will not use any violence against the youth, but we will ask them to go home, and we'll ask their parents to ask them to come home.
Just to make it clear, you will not order the military to evacuate them from the square?
No, we will ask them to go home, but we will not push them to go home.
Never?
No way. No way.
Do you believe the young people in the square have legitimate grievances?
We, of course, looked at their demands, and we discussed it here in this palace, and we decided that we have to respond positively. It is a process starting by national dialogue, which I started this morning, and we will continue tomorrow and after tomorrow.
Vice President Suleiman said that he had also reached out to the Muslim Brotherhood in terms of dialogue for the future, and now everybody here is waiting to see how the next few days play out. Diane?
Yes, it's a question about the reality and whether reality is perceived or not. Christiane, would you say at this point they think they're going to weather this?
I feel that from what they told me, they think they're going to be able to weather this. And furthermore, the Vice President told me that this is not Tunisia and Mubarak is not Ben Ali. In other words, referring to the fact that the President of Tunisia was forced to flee, but the President of Egypt would not be forced to flee. Diane?
Christiane, thank you. And again, to the formidable bravery and reporting of our team over in Cairo. Thank you again, and to all of them. And we'll be back with you at the end of the broadcast. And by the way, you should know Christiane was inside just now because security said it was too dangerous to broadcast outside. And you can see a lot more of her exclusive interview with President Mubarak and his Vice President Suleiman tonight on a special 1-hour edition of Nightline. But we want to head straight to the White House right now because they have been weighing in on Mubarak's answers to Christiane. And let's bring in Jake Tapper and see what they're saying. Jake?
Good evening, Diane. Well, there was no official White House response to the interview, but one White House official I spoke to said he found it very significant that President Mubarak said that there was never any intention to have Gamal run to replace him. That, of course, was one of the messages that the President Obama had that special envoy Frank Wisner delivered to Mubarak to say not only should he not run for re-election, but his son should not be on the quote-unquote ballot either. And, of course, Mubarak said nothing about that when he spoke to Egypt on Tuesday, so the fact that he said it in his interview with Christiane, they found very significant.
Interesting that he's just saying it now. Okay, Jake Tapper at the White House. And as we mentioned, the thugs have been out on the streets in Cairo tonight saying they want to stop all these pictures being broadcast here and around the world. And they have been threatening journalists with violence, with death. David Muir is also in Cairo tonight, where, as we said, it's too dangerous to report outside. David?
That's right, Diane. In fact, hotel security swept through the building before the broadcast tonight, making us come inside from the balconies, as you pointed out. We witnessed another 24 hours of confrontation in this city today, and some of it is difficult to watch.
It was a battle that lit up Cairo before the sun could come up this morning. Cars set ablaze, Molotov cocktails hurled right into the crowd, bodies dragged down the streets, and the mobs beating the protesters. Then daybreak brought a sign the military had begun to step in, taking this man to nearby tanks, kicking him to the ground. And this image racing across the internet of a police van barreling through a Cairo neighborhood, suddenly running over people in the street. A lawless portrait in the heart of the city. And today, a clearer picture of something else, the escalating threat against journalists here. In the last 24 hours, at least 100 reporters and photographers have been attacked, largely by people who say they're Mubarak supporters and that this international spotlight has helped bring their president and their country down. It started with fists and stones thrown at cars. Our team with Christiane.
Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Waggy? No.
CNN posted this, their crew being punched again and again outside the National Museum. And one of our teams today, carjacked, stopped by who they thought were citizen police like we've all seen here. But this was different. ABC cameraman Akram Abihana and our team were told this.
We're going to behead you. I mean, I was under the impression that this was it.
But Akram, a veteran war photographer, used his Arabic and his compassion, hugging and kissing an elder in that angry mob, and it worked. But those mobs are striking fear everywhere. At dusk along the Nile, the race to barricade neighborhoods. No one is allowed in. We want to be safe, he yells at us.
The neighborhood's so tense now, they don't even want us near the entrance to their neighborhood with a camera. You can see they're putting the barricades up now. And this is a scene playing out in neighborhoods all through Cairo.
And then this, word today from that young man we first met on our flight into Cairo, from Texas, coming to Egypt to check on his grandmother. Now black eyes after coming under attack in Tahrir Square.
Sharif told us late today that he is okay. He's not going to head back to Tahrir Square tonight. We were grateful to hear that. And Diane, also okay, Akram, as you know, the photographer standing right here behind the camera, producer Brian Hartman, and that crew in that car today, the Arabic and their compassion, getting them through that mob.
That's right. Akram really was brave, and it was spiritual genius to know what to do in that room. Thank you so much, David Muir. But to put that unrest you just saw in the streets of Cairo in some perspective tonight, Egypt is a country of 80 million people. 8 million of them do live in Cairo. But at the peak, the protests were 250,000 protesters strong. So what about the rest of Cairo's citizens? Lama Hassan spent the day working the phones, trying to find out about the hospitals and the people at home.
Everyday life disrupted.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
We reached a 23-year-old named Sarah. She spoke of standing guard over her home with her father and brother, all the while clutching pepper spray.
How long can you keep this up? How long are you going to stay at home?
There are two sides of it. There's a side of how are we going to live if this keeps going on like that? And the other side is how are we going to gain our freedom?
We reached a doctor at the Children's Cancer Hospital here. He described an army of neighborhood volunteers wielding knives, coming to the hospital offering protection from the mobs.
We asked them what you want, and they are telling us we want to help protecting the hospital from any attacks.
There is gas for sale, but you have to buy it away from the stations on the black market. You can get everyday foods like rice and lentils, but they are 80% more expensive. Perhaps it was a 21-year-old named Ahmed who summed up life here the best.
People compromise, and people actually seem to stand by each other during such a crisis.
So you're helping your neighbors?
Exactly.
Neighbors holding on to each other. Lama Hassan, ABC News.